Welcome to a new style here on the channel. I want you to dive into the story in a different way. From now on, the visuals won't be the main focus. Instead, I want you to feel each word, each detail, as the sound of rain creates the perfect atmosphere for the story you're about to hear. Now I invite you to close your eyes, or let the video play while you relax in a quiet place, whether that's your room with the lights off, or even in the car on a night drive. I'll guide you into this experience. And if you're listening with headphones, get ready because every sound is designed to make you feel the tension of the story. By the way, where are you listening to this story from? Let me know in the comments. My name is Paul, and I'm a mechanic here in Whitehorse, Yukon. I've been working on cars for as long as I can remember, but officially it's been about 20-something years. I learned from my dad, who had a shop in town. He was one of those old school guys, you know? Believed that if you do something, you gotta do it right with honesty. That's the kind of belief he passed on to me, and I try to stick to it even now, especially in the shop where I spend most of my days. My family's pretty small. I have 2 daughters, one already in college in Vancouver, and the other still in high school. My wife takes care of the house and works as a cashier at a convenience store nearby. We're a simple family, and I'd say our beliefs are kind of traditional too. Nothing too religious, but we always believed there's something beyond. My mom used to say that things have a way they're meant to be, that we shouldn't mess with stuff we don't understand. I think that thought stuck with me since I was a kid, and to this day I'm a bit wary about certain things, especially those road stories. Anyway, all this is just to say I'm a regular guy, living a simple life, with the same worries as everyone else around here, especially when winter comes. Things get really tough. The roads are almost always covered in snow, and we need to be ready for anything. I've got an old truck that's my companion on these adventures. It saved me from trouble many times. It was one of those cold winter nights around January when I got a call from a client. The guy was stranded in a remote area, about 40 kilometers from Whitehorse, near a road no one likes to take at night. His car had broken down, and he needed help figuring out what was wrong. I hesitated a bit, but since I knew the client and the job would pay well, I decided to go. My wife, as usual, thought it was a bit odd for me to go out so late, but she was used to these last-minute calls. So I grabbed my tools, put on my thickest coat, and headed out. The road was deserted, which wasn't surprising. Winter in the Yukon keeps anyone away, even the most daring drivers. Driving through those white landscapes, the silence is almost total, only broken by the sound of the tires crushing the snow. The temperature was around minus 25 degrees Celsius, and even inside the car I could feel that chill coming through the window cracks. After about 30 minutes of driving, I felt something wasn't right with the engine. It started with a weird sputtering, and then the car began to stutter. I thought it was something minor, just a little issue because of the cold. I pulled over with the engine almost dying and got out to take a look. The first thing I felt was that biting cold, that kind of cold that even makes the air hurt when you breathe. I lifted the hood and started checking the engine, trying to see what was wrong. I had a flashlight in my pocket and lit up whatever I could. I was so focused I didn't even notice the silence around me until all of a sudden, I heard footsteps in the snow. A dry sound coming from somewhere behind me. My first thought was it was some animal. Around here, it's common to see wolves, bears, but in that cold and at that hour, even that was rare. I kept working, trying to ignore the sound, but things started getting weirder. The footsteps seemed rhythmic, like someone was pacing back and forth closer and closer to where I was. I tried to stay calm, but curiosity got the best of me, and I ended up turning my head to see. There was absolutely nothing, just snow and more snow, and those frozen trees along the road. The flashlight didn't shine too far, so I went back to the engine, thinking it was just my imagination. But then, when I least expected it, the sound came back, this time even closer. They were well-defined steps, crushing the snow slowly. That's when I really started getting uncomfortable. It wasn't the sound of an animal anymore. It felt like someone was walking around me. That area was completely deserted, and the only house I knew of was a good few kilometers away. I tried to speed things up. The cold was already freezing my hands even with gloves on. The engine was cold and anything I tried seemed useless. So I decided to get back in the car and try to start it, to see if I could get out of there. I sat down, turned the key, and nothing. The engine made that weak sound, sputtering. Every time I tried, it felt like the car was dying more, like it was being turned off on purpose. I kept looking out the window, feeling that strange sensation that someone was out there. But it was hard to believe it was real. I tried to rationalize, think it was the wind, maybe the echo of the engine itself, but nothing made sense. After several tries, the engine finally started. A bit rough, but it worked. I was so relieved I almost yelled. I shifted gears and started moving slowly, afraid the engine might die again. As I drove away, I kept looking in the rearview mirror, trying to see anything on the shoulder. But it was just snow, nothing more. Still, that feeling that someone had been there stayed with me. I got to the client's place, did the job, but I didn't mention anything. I thought they'd think I was crazy. The guy was in a hurry, thanked me, and went on his way. But before leaving, he said something strange. This road here, especially in this cold, is full of stories. People have seen things, heard things. I myself avoid coming through here at night when I can. He laughed, but looked a bit nervous, like he knew something. On the way back, I kept thinking about it. I'm not the kind who believes in these things, but what I heard that night was real. A few days later, talking with some people I knew, I learned that others had reported similar experiences on that road. Everyone said they felt a presence, especially during the winter months. To this day, I don't know what happened that night. If it was my mind playing tricks on me because of the cold, or if there really was someone or something there. But one thing I guarantee, after that day, I avoid taking that road at night whenever I can. Whatever it is, it's like my mom used to say. Some things are just meant to be left alone. And maybe, just maybe, I shouldn't have gone out there. My name is Luke, and I've been a taxi driver in Quebec for almost 15 years. I started this job right after finishing high school, and let me tell you, it's not an easy life. Here in Canada, especially in the winter, things get tough. The roads freeze over, schedules get messed up, but it's what keeps the bills paid. I was born and raised here, always in this fast-paced life. I have a young daughter, Marie, and my wife, Claire, works at a cafe. We live simply, but it's enough for us. My family has always been full of stories about different things. My grandmother used to say that we shouldn't mess with what we don't understand. She was pretty superstitious, and that kind of thing has always been common in our family. My dad was the same, though he didn't talk much about that stuff. I never really believed in it, but after what happened that night, I think I started to rethink things. It was one January night, one of those where the cold feels like it cuts through your skin. Winter in Quebec can be brutal. At that time of year, rides are slow, hardly anyone on the streets, so any call is welcome. Around 11 at night, I got a request in an isolated area off Kings Road. For those who aren't from Quebec, this road is known for being deserted and kind of creepy, especially at night. A lot of people avoid going there, but I thought, a ride's a ride, so I accepted. I drove through the almost empty streets, watching the city disappear as I entered the road. There was nothing, just snow piled up on the sides of the road, and the wind making a strange sound, blowing through the trees. The GPS said I was almost there, but the closer I got, the less I saw any signs of people nearby. When I got to the exact spot, I stopped and looked around. Nothing. Just darkness and my headlights lighting up the empty space. I thought the passenger was running late, so I waited a bit, but after about 5 minutes I started to feel it was strange. Normally, the system cancels the ride after a while if the passenger doesn't show up, but this ride stayed active, as if someone was there. I checked my phone, thinking maybe the system was frozen, but everything seemed fine. The ride was still active on the app. I figured it was just another passenger who forgot to cancel, which happens all the time, so I was about to leave when I heard the back door. I can't really explain the sound, but it was like someone opened and closed the back door. A dry, direct sound. But the car didn't move, which confused me. I looked in the rearview mirror, but I only saw the empty seat. I was kind of frozen, trying to understand what had happened. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, maybe a sound from the road itself, but the noise had been too clear. I decided to follow the route, still thinking it was just some system glitch. But as I drove, I started to feel the car getting heavier, like someone really was sitting back there. You know, I've had all kinds of passengers in my time on the road, but this felt different. Every time I looked in the rearview mirror, there was no one, but the feeling that someone was there was very strong. And then, to make things worse, I started to hear noises coming from the back seat. They were like whispers, a low muffled sound. Sometimes it sounded like someone breathing there. The sound would come and go, like it was right next to my ear, but when I looked, there was nothing. I tried to focus on driving, but my heart was pounding. The road was long and deserted, and I knew that until I got to the destination, it was just me and this weird feeling. When I finally saw the destination on the GPS, I felt a huge relief. But what happened next was even stranger. The route disappeared out of nowhere like it had been canceled. But the weirdest thing was that at that same moment, I heard the back door open and close again. But again, I saw no one. I stopped the car for a second, trying to make sense of what was happening. But there was no explanation. I was alone, and the ride was no longer on the system. I sat there for a few seconds, not knowing what to do. I looked in the rearview mirror one more time, just to make sure no one was there. But the seat was empty, and the cold inside the car seemed to have gotten worse. I can't explain it, but it was a different kind of cold, one that made me uncomfortable. I started the car and got out of there as fast as I could, not even looking back. I came home that night with that strange feeling in my chest, like something had happened and I couldn't understand what. I told Claire the next day, but she just laughed, thinking I was exaggerating. But since that night, I avoid taking rides in that area of Kings Road. It might sound silly, but I feel like that wasn't a system error or anything normal. After that, I started asking other taxi drivers around the city, trying not to sound crazy. Some thought it was funny, but others, especially the older ones, said they had heard strange things about that road. One of them even told me that a few years ago, a woman had been hit by a car there and that people say her soul is stuck in the area, hitching rides with those who pass by. I don't know if I believe that, but after that night, I don't doubt anything anymore. Recently, I found myself thinking of my grandmother and what she always said about not messing with things you don't understand. I spent my life thinking they were just stories, but after what happened, I'd rather not take any chances. I don't know how to explain what I saw or felt that night, but one thing's for sure. Some rides I'd rather leave for someone else.